You want to know about humiliation? Real humiliation. Let me tell you what it feels like to become invisible in a room full of people who share your blood. Let me tell you what it's like when your own son looks at you like you're a stain on his expensive carpet. This is Ruthless Retribution. If you believe dignity matters more than money, drop your location in the comments right now. I'm personally shouting out viewers from around the world in my next video. Let's see how far this message spreads. It was at the Grand Pearson Hotel. You know the one. Marble floors, so polished you can see your reflection, chandeliers that cost more than I made in 5 years of honest work. My son Marcus was hosting some kind of corporate anniversary dinner. 23 years of Walker Industries, they called it. 23 years of success built on principles I taught him when he was knee-high to a grasshopper, sitting in my garage watching me rebuild carburetors with grease under my fingernails. I showed up in my good suit, not a designer suit, mind you, just a clean press suit from Sears that I'd worn to my wife's funeral 3 years prior. Navy blue, respectable. I'd shined my shoes that morning until I could see my face in them. I wanted to make Marcus proud. Stupid old man that I was, I actually thought he'd be happy to see me. The invitation had come in the mail 2 weeks before. Thick, cream-colored cardstock with gold lettering. "You are cordially invited," it said. My name was printed right there, Harold Walker. I'd run my fingers over those letters a dozen times, feeling the embossed ink, thinking maybe, just maybe, this meant I still mattered to him. I was wrong. I arrived right on time, 6 o'clock sharp, just like the invitation said. The valet looked at my 15-year-old Buick like it was a horse and buggy, but he took the keys anyway. I walked through those massive doors, and the first thing that hit me was the music. Some kind of string quartet playing something fancy I didn't recognize. The second thing that hit me was the smell. Expensive perfume and fresh flowers and money. That's right, money has a smell when there's enough of it in one place. The lobby was full of people in clothes that cost more than my monthly social security check. Women in evening gowns that sparkled under the lights. Men in tuxedos laughing with crystal glasses in their hands. I felt every one of my 72 years in that moment. Felt the calluses on my palms, the slight hunch in my shoulders from decades bent over engine blocks, the gray in what was left of my hair. But I held my head up. I'm a walker after all. We don't slouch. I spotted Marcus across the room, holding court with a circle of suits. My boy? 6'2", silver streaks in his dark hair, looking every inch the successful CEO. My chest swelled with pride for just a second. That's my son, I thought. That's my Marcus. I raised him right. Then our eyes met. You ever see someone look at you and watch their expression die? It's not like the movies where someone frowns or scowls. No, it's subtler than that. It's a flash of something, panic maybe, embarrassment. Whatever it was, it made my stomach drop like I'd missed a step in the dark. He excused himself from his group and walked over, but not with the stride of a man happy to see his father. This was the walk of a man approaching a problem that needed solving. "Dad," he said, not quite meeting my eyes. "You came?" "Of course I came," I said, reaching out to embrace him. "You invited me, didn't you?" He allowed the hug, but it was stiff, formal, like hugging a store mannequin. When I pulled back, I saw his wife, Vanessa, gliding toward us in a dress that probably cost more than my car. She had that look on her face, you know the one? The look that says she smells something unpleasant and she's trying to figure out where it's coming from. "Harold," she said. Not Dad, not even a warm hello. Just my name, said like it was a weather report. Cloudy with a chance of disappointment. "Vanessa," I nodded. "You look lovely." She didn't thank me, just exchanged a glance with Marcus. One of those married people glances that speaks volumes without saying a word. "Dad, listen," Marcus said, lowering his voice and taking my elbow like he was about to steer me somewhere. "This is actually a pretty important event. Lots of investors, board members, potential partners." "I know," I said. That's why I'm glad you invited me. Wanted to see what you've built. Another glance between them. Vanessa's lips pressed into a thin line. The thing is, Marcus continued, and his grip on my elbow tightened just slightly. The seating arrangements are pretty specific, very strategic, you understand? Who sits with who matters for business relationships, and I don't need a special seat, I interrupted. Just point me to my table and I'll... That's just it, Dad. He still wasn't looking at me. The tables are full, prearranged. Everyone's been assigned based on business considerations. I felt something cold creep up my spine. So where am I sitting? Vanessa touched Marcus's arm. Maybe there's a spot in the back? Near the service entrance? The service entrance. Let that sink in. The place where the caterers bring in the food, where the staff comes and goes, where you put people you don't want anyone to see. I'm sure we can find somewhere, Marcus said, and the pity in his voice was somehow worse than the dismissal. Just, Dad, please, don't sit with the guests. You'll ruin the image we're going for. There it was, the words that would echo in my head for weeks afterward. Don't sit with the guests. You'll ruin the image. I'm 72 years old. I've been through Vietnam, 3 recessions, and the death of the woman I loved more than my own life. I've broken bones, lost jobs, buried friends. I thought I knew what pain felt like, but standing there in that marble lobby with my son, my own flesh and blood, telling me I was an embarrassment, that I'd ruin his carefully cultivated image, that was a new kind of pain, the kind that starts in your chest and spreads out like poison, making your hands shake and your vision blur. I wanted to yell, God, I wanted to yell, wanted to grab him by his expensive lapels and remind him who taught him to tie his shoes, who sat up with him when he had nightmares, who worked double shifts at the garage to pay for his college education. Wanted to remind him that this image he was so worried about was built on the foundation of values I'd spent 18 years drilling into his head. But I didn't. You know why? Because I'm a walker, and walkers don't make scenes. We don't embarrass our children in public, even when they're embarrassing us. We swallow our pride, we straighten our spines, and we endure. So I nodded, just nodded. I understand, I said quietly. Where should I go? The relief on Marcus's face made me sick. There's a small table. Behind the divider near the kitchen, you'll still be able to hear everything, see the speeches. It's just more discreet. Discreet. Another word for hidden, another word for ashamed. A young woman in a black vest appeared, one of the event coordinators. Marcus must have signaled her, because she smiled professionally and said, Mr. Walker, if you'll follow me, please. I followed her through the grand ballroom, past tables draped in white linen and covered with elaborate centerpieces, past all those guests in their finery, laughing and networking and living in a world I apparently didn't belong to anymore. Some of them glanced at me. A few faces looked vaguely familiar, people I'd met at Marcus's wedding, maybe, or at some company picnic years ago, but their eyes slid right off me like I was furniture being moved into place. The coordinator led me to the back corner, behind a decorative screen, a tiny round table with a single chair tucked away like a dirty secret. There was a place setting, one plate, one set of silverware, one water glass, and a small card that said Harold Walker in the same gold script from the invitation. At least they spelled my name right. Is this acceptable, sir? The coordinator asked, and I could hear the discomfort in her voice. She knew this was wrong. It's fine. I lied. Thank you. She hesitated like she wanted to say something else, then just nodded and walked away. I sat down in that chair, and I've never felt more alone in a room full of people. The decorative screen blocked most of my view of the ballroom, but I could hear everything. The laughter, the clinking of glasses, the confident voices of successful people discussing successful things. A waiter came by. A young kid, couldn't have been more than 22. He looked surprised to see someone sitting back here. Oh, he said. I didn't realize anyone was... Would you like some water, sir? Please. He filled my glass, and I saw pity in his eyes, too. Everyone could see it. Everyone could see that I'd been put out to pasture like an old horse that couldn't pull the plow anymore. I sat there for what felt like hours, but was probably only 20 minutes. Sat there listening to my son's voice over the microphone, welcoming everyone, thanking them for coming to celebrate Walker Industries. He talked about innovation and growth and market expansion. He talked about vision and leadership and building a legacy. He didn't mention me once, not once, didn't mention the nights I spent teaching him how to read blueprints by lamplight at our kitchen table. Didn't mention the values I'd instilled in him about honest work and treating people with dignity. Didn't mention that the Walker in Walker Industries was my name before it was his. I was being erased, quietly, carefully, systematically erased from my own family's story. The anger came in waves. I'd clench my fists under the table until my knuckles went white, then force myself to breathe and relax. Clench and breathe, clench and breathe. An old mechanic's rhythm, like tightening bolts. 1, 2, 3, release. But the pain was constant. It sat in my chest like a stone, heavy and cold. This was my son, my boy, the child I'd held in my arms the day he was born, who'd looked up at me with those dark eyes and grabbed my finger with his tiny hand. The kid who'd run to me crying when he fell off his bike, who'd asked me to teach him everything I knew about engines because he wanted to be just like his old man. When had I become someone to hide? When had I become someone to be ashamed of? My wife, Sarah, used to say I was too proud. Harold, she'd tell me, you've got to learn to bend a little. Not everything has to be about dignity and respect. But she didn't understand. When you're a working man, when you've spent your whole life with your hands in grease and your back against the odds, dignity is all you've got. Respect is what you earn when you can't earn wealth. It's what you leave behind when the money runs out. And my son was taking even that from me. I was sitting there drowning in my own thoughts when someone spoke. Excuse me? Is the seat taken? I looked up. A man stood there, about 60 maybe, with graying temples and sharp eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. He wore a tuxedo that fit him like it was made for him, which it probably was. He had the bearing of someone used to being listened to. This is the only chair, I said, gesturing to my lonely little table. I meant, may I pull one up? He smiled. It's getting crowded out there. And honestly, I could use a break from the networking. I didn't know what to say. Why would this man, clearly someone important, want to sit with me back here in the shadows? Sure, if you want. He signaled to a passing waiter who quickly brought another chair. The man sat down across from me, and I noticed several people in the ballroom glancing over with curiosity. A few whispered to each other. Harold Walker, the man said, extending his hand. I've been looking for you. I shook his hand, confused. Do I know you? You wouldn't remember me, he said, but I remember you. Very well, actually. My name is Robert Chen. Does that ring a bell? I searched my memory. Robert Chen. Nothing. I'm sorry, I said. I don't. 1995, he said. A small garage on Maple Street. You were the only mechanic who'd work on my truck, a beat-up Ford Ranger with a blown gasket and no money to fix it properly. Ring any bells now? And then, like a light switching on, I remembered. A young Chinese man, couldn't have been more than 28, 30, just getting started in life, wearing clothes that had been washed too many times. He'd pushed that truck into my garage on a Saturday afternoon, apologizing for not having an appointment, saying he knew it was closing time, but he was desperate. The young guy trying to start a business, I said slowly. You needed the truck for deliveries. Robert Chen's smile widened. You remember? You didn't have enough money for parts, I continued, the memory coming back clearer now. But you promised you'd pay me back when your business took off. I told you. I paused, remembering my exact words. I told you to forget about the money. Just promised you'd do the same for someone else someday when you made it big. I did make it big, Robert said quietly, and I never forgot. What kind of business did you end up in? I asked, genuinely curious. Logistics and shipping, he said. Started with that one truck you fixed. Now I run Chen Global Transport. Maybe you've heard of it? I had. Everyone had. Chen Global Transport was massive, one of the largest shipping companies in the country. I'd seen their trucks on every highway, their logo on cargo ships in the news. That was you, I said, shocked. You're that Robert Chen? Thanks to you, he said. That truck you fixed for free, that was my lifeline. I'd just landed my first contract, but I couldn't make the deliveries without it. If you hadn't helped me, he shook his head, I wouldn't be here today. I didn't know what to say. I'd fixed a lot of trucks in my 35 years as a mechanic, helped a lot of people who were down on their luck. It was just what you did. You didn't keep a ledger. You didn't demand payment for basic human kindness. I'm glad it worked out for you, I said finally. More than worked out, Robert said. He glanced around at the ballroom, at the screen that hid us from view. Though I have to ask, why are you sitting back here? A man like you should be at the head table. The shame of it burned through me again. It's complicated, is it? His eyes were sharp, knowing. Or is it that your son doesn't realize what he has? I looked at him in surprise. I know Marcus Walker, Robert said. Done business with Walker Industries before. Smart man, successful, but I've always wondered where he learned his principles. Now I know. He paused. And I'm sorry he's forgotten where he came from. The understanding in his voice nearly broke me. This stranger, someone I'd helped decades ago and barely remembered, saw me more clearly than my own son did. It's his event, I said quietly. His company, his rules. Interesting, Robert said. Because I was about to announce a major partnership. We're expanding our distribution network, and we've been considering Walker Industries as a key partner. It would be worth about $50 million over 5 years. My eyebrows shot up. That's significant. It is, Robert agreed, but I only do business with companies that share my values. Honor, loyalty, gratitude, the kind of values a man named Harold Walker taught me in a garage 30 years ago. He stood up. I think it's time I had a conversation with your son. Care to join me? And just like that, something shifted in my chest. The pain was still there, the anger still simmered, but there was something else now, something that felt almost like hope. Mr. Chen, I said, I don't want to cause trouble. You won't be, he said, extending his hand to help me up. I will. We walked out from behind that screen together, and I swear the temperature in that room changed. Heads turned. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Because Robert Chen, one of the most powerful men in the logistics industry, was walking through the ballroom with his arm around my shoulder like we were old friends, which I suppose we were. Marcus saw us coming. I watched his face go through about 5 different emotions in 3 seconds. Confusion, recognition, panic, calculation, and finally, a forced smile. Mr. Chen, he said, striding over with his hand extended. What an honor. I didn't realize you'd arrived. We have a seat for you at the VIP table. Right up. I've already found a seat, Robert said smoothly. With my old friend Harold here. You didn't tell me your father would be here tonight, Marcus. The color drained from Marcus's face. Dad, I didn't know you knew Mr. Chen. Your father saved my business before I even had a business, Robert said. His voice was pleasant, conversational, but there was steel underneath it. I was about to tell you this in private, but perhaps it's better said here. Chen Global has been considering a distribution partnership with Walker Industries. It's a deal that could transform your company's reach. Marcus's eyes went wide. Vanessa appeared at his elbow like a shark smelling blood in the water. Mr. Chen, Marcus said, his voice taking on that smooth business tone, we'd be incredibly interested in discussing However, Robert continued, cutting him off, I only partner with companies whose values align with mine. Companies that understand loyalty, that honor their foundations, that respect their roots. He looked at Marcus meaningfully. Tell me, Marcus, does Walker Industries honor its foundations? The question hung in the air like a sword. Marcus's mouth opened and closed. Vanessa looked like she wanted to melt into the floor. I stood there, watching my son squirm, and I felt a dark satisfaction that I'm not proud of. But God help me, it felt good. After being shoved into the shadows, after being treated like an embarrassment, it felt good to watch the tables turn. Of course we do, Marcus stammered. Our company is built on strong principles. Principles your father taught you? Robert asked. Yes, absolutely. Then why, Robert said quietly, is he sitting behind a screen like someone to be ashamed of? The silence that followed was deafening. Every important person in that ballroom was watching now. Board members, investors, competitors, all witnessing Marcus Walker being called out by one of the most powerful men in the industry. Marcus's face went red. That was a misunderstanding, a seating error. Dad, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean what? I found my voice and it came out steadier than I expected. Didn't mean to tell me I'd ruin your image? Didn't mean to hide me away like a dirty secret? Dad, please. No, I said. 30 years of swallowed pride came bubbling up. No, I don't think I will. You want to know what's interesting, Marcus? Mr. Chen here remembered me. Remembered a kindness I showed him 30 years ago. But you couldn't even remember that the name on your company, the name that opens doors and makes deals, is my name first. Harold, Robert said gently, perhaps we should... Walker, I continued, the words flowing now like water from a broken dam. Walker was my father's name. He was a factory worker who never finished high school, but he taught me that a man's worth isn't measured in dollars. It's measured in how he treats people when there's nothing in it for him. I taught you the same thing, Marcus, or at least I tried to. Marcus looked stricken. Dad, I never meant to hurt you. But you did, I said simply. You hurt me more than I can explain, because it's one thing to be poor, it's one thing to be old and forgotten, but to be pushed aside by your own child, that's a pain I wouldn't wish on anyone. Vanessa tried to interject. Harold, you have to understand the pressures of... Ma'am, I said, turning to her, with all due respect, I understand pressure just fine. I raised a son on a mechanic's salary while my wife was sick. I worked 16-hour days to keep food on the table and clothes on his back. I know about pressure. What I don't understand is cruelty dressed up as business strategy. Robert Chen stepped forward. Marcus, I'm going to be direct. Chen Global Transport does substantial business in this region. The partnership I mentioned would indeed be valuable to Walker Industries, but it's contingent on one thing, that you remember who you are and where you came from. Your father didn't build a company, but he built you, and that's worth more than any contract. Pause, letting that sink in. I'll be in town for 3 more days, Robert continued. If you can demonstrate to me that Walker Industries truly honors its foundations, and I mean truly, not just in words but in actions, then we'll talk business. Otherwise, I'll take my partnership elsewhere. With that, he turned to me. Harold, I'd like to continue our conversation, but somewhere more comfortable than a room full of people who don't appreciate what they have. Would you join me for dinner? There's an excellent steakhouse downtown, and I have about 30 years of gratitude to express. I looked at my son, at his pale face, his desperate eyes, the panic setting in as he realized what was happening. Part of me wanted to save him, to smooth this over, to make it all okay like I'd done 1,000 times when he was a boy. But the other part of me, the part that still hurt from being hidden away, from being told I'd ruin the image, that part wanted him to feel this, to understand that actions have consequences, that you can't treat people like garbage and expect them to smile and take it. "I'd like that very much, Mr. Chen," I said. "Robert, please," he said warmly. "Anyone who helped me the way you did can call me Robert." We walked toward the exit together. Behind us, I could hear the whispers starting, the speculation, the damage to Marcus's carefully cultivated image. Every step I took away from that ballroom felt like reclaiming a piece of myself. At the door, I paused and looked back. Marcus stood frozen in the middle of the floor, surrounded by all his important guests, looking more lost than I'd ever seen him. Our eyes met across the room. I didn't smile, I didn't gloat, I just looked at him, really looked at him, and hoped he saw what I was seeing. A successful man who'd forgotten the most important success of all is being a good human being. Then I turned and walked out. The evening air hit my face, cool and clean. Robert's driver pulled up in a black Mercedes, and we climbed in. As the car pulled away from the Grand Pearson Hotel, I watched the lights fade in the rearview mirror. "You okay?" Robert asked. I thought about it. Was I okay? My son had humiliated me. My daughter-in-law had treated me like trash. I'd been hidden away and diminished and made to feel worthless. But I'd also found an unexpected ally. I'd spoken my truth. I'd walked away with my dignity intact. "I will be," I said. And sitting there in that car, heading toward a dinner with a man who'd remembered my kindness after 3 decades, I actually believed it. The steakhouse was called Morrison's, one of those old school places with leather booths and dark wood paneling that's been around since the 50s. The kind of place where the waiters wear white jackets and know how to make a proper Manhattan. Robert had a booth in the back, private and quiet, away from the main dining room. I'd never been to Morrison's. Couldn't afford it on a mechanic's pension, but Robert ordered like a man who'd eaten there 1,000 times. 2 porterhouse steaks, medium rare, with all the fixings. A bottle of wine that probably cost more than my electric bill. "I don't drink much anymore," I admitted when the sommelier poured. "Tonight you do?" Robert said, raising his glass. "To old friends and second chances." I raised mine, and we drank. The wine was smooth, rich, nothing like the cheap stuff I'd buy at the grocery store for special occasions. It tasted like money, which I suppose it was. For a while we just ate, and God, that steak was good. Butter soft, perfectly seasoned, the kind of meal that reminds you what real food is supposed to taste like. I'd been living on canned soup and microwave dinners since Sarah passed. Eating felt like a chore, something you did to keep the body running, but this was different. "Tell me about your wife," Robert said gently, cutting into his steak. "You mentioned her briefly back at the garage. All those years ago, you were worried about her medical bills." The mention of Sarah hit me like it always did. Sharp pain followed by a dull ache. "Sarah?" I said, her name feeling both familiar and strange in my mouth. "She died 3 years ago. Cancer. Started in her lungs, spread everywhere." "I'm sorry." "She never smoked a day in her life," I continued, and I could hear the bitterness in my own voice. "Never did anything wrong. Raised our kids, volunteered at the church, made the best apple pie you ever tasted. And cancer took her anyway, took her slow, too. Gave us just enough time to watch her fade away, piece by piece." Robert nodded, his face somber. "That's the cruelest kind of goodbye. Marcus came to the funeral," I said. "Brought flowers, expensive ones. Gave a nice speech about how much his mother meant to him. Then he went back to his life and I went back to mine. He calls on my birthday. Sends a card at Christmas, but that's about it." "And your other children?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "I have a daughter, Jennifer. She lives in Seattle now, married to a lawyer. She calls more than Marcus does, maybe once a month. Asks how I'm doing, tells me about her kids that I've never met. She sent me pictures once. 3 grandchildren I wouldn't recognize if they walked past me on the street." The anger was back, simmering just below the surface. "You want to know the funny thing? I worked my whole life thinking I was building something. Building a family, a legacy. teaching my kids values that would last. But all I really did was raise strangers who are too busy for the old man who wiped their noses and paid their college tuition. Harold, no, it's true, I insisted. I'm a relic, a reminder of a life they've moved past. Marcus got his MBA, started his company, married a woman who thinks people like me are beneath her. Jennifer got her law degree, moved across the country, built a life that doesn't have room for a retired mechanic with grease still under his fingernails. I took another drink of wine, felt it burn down my throat. Sarah used to say I was too hard on them, that I expected too much. But I didn't expect much, Robert. I just expected them to remember where they came from, to remember that success doesn't mean you abandon the people who helped you get there. She sounds like a wise woman. She was, I said quietly. She was the glue that held us together. When she got sick, I thought maybe it would bring us closer, thought maybe Marcus would come home more, help me take care of her. But he was always too busy. Important meetings, business trips. He'd send money. God, he'd send so much money for her treatments, the best doctors, experimental therapies. But he wouldn't send himself. I stared at my plate, at the perfectly cooked steak I was barely tasting. The night she died, I called him. It was 2 a.m, and I knew she only had hours left. I asked him to come, begged him actually. You know what he said? Robert waited, his expression patient and sad. He said he had a board meeting in the morning. A board meeting. Said he'd come by on the weekend to pay his respects. But she died at 4:30 that morning, and he wasn't there. I held her hand by myself, watched her take her last breath by myself, and when he showed up 3 days later for the funeral, all dressed up in his expensive suit, he had the nerve to cry like he'd lost something precious. The tears came then, hot and unexpected. I wiped at them angrily with my napkin. 72 years old and crying in a steakhouse like a child. I'm sorry, I muttered. Don't apologize, Robert said firmly. You've earned the right to feel what you feel. We sat in silence for a moment. The restaurant hummed around us, quiet conversations, the clink of silverware, someone laughing at a nearby table, normal life. Carrying on like always. After Sarah died, I continued, my voice steadier now, I thought maybe I'd get closer to my kids. Thought maybe without her, they'd realize I needed them. But the opposite happened. It was like without her there to bridge the gap between us, there was nothing left, just empty phone calls and obligatory visits and the slow realization that I was alone. You're not alone tonight, Robert said. I looked at him. Really looked at him, this man I'd helped 30 years ago, who'd remembered a simple act of kindness and sought me out, who'd stood up for me in front of all those people, who'd walked away from a business deal to have dinner with a broken old man. Why? I asked. Why did you do what you did tonight? Robert set down his fork. Because I know what it's like to be invisible. When I came to your garage in 1995, I was nobody. Barely getting by, trying to start a business with a truck that was falling apart. Everyone else turned me away. Too risky, they said. Too much trouble. But you didn't. He leaned forward. You didn't just fix my truck, Harold. You talked to me, asked about my plans, told me stories about building your own business from nothing. You treated me like I mattered, like I was worth your time. Do you have any idea how rare that is? I shook my head. I've been successful now for 25 years, Robert continued, built a company worth billions, and I've met thousands of people. Businessmen, politicians, celebrities. Most of them only see what I can do for them. They see the money, the connections, the power. But you saw a young man with a broken truck and you helped him anyway. No agenda, no angle, just human decency. He paused, his eyes intense. So when I saw you tonight, hidden away like garbage, treated like an embarrassment by your own son, that made me angry because a man like you deserves better, and I had the power to do something about it. I don't want revenge, I said, though I wasn't sure that was entirely true. I just want my son to see me, to remember that I'm still here. Then that's what we'll make happen, Robert said. But first, tell me about the garage, about those years when you were building something. I want to hear the stories. So I told him. Told him about opening Walker's Auto Repair in 1975 with nothing but a toolbox and a dream. About Sarah and me getting married that same year. Her bringing me lunch in a paper bag and sitting on an overturned bucket while I worked, just to keep me company. About Marcus being born 2 years later and Jennifer 3 years after that. About them playing in the corner of the garage while I rebuilt engines, getting grease on their clothes and laughter in their lungs. I told him about the regular customers who became friends, about Mrs. Henderson who brought me homemade cookies every time I fixed her Oldsmobile, about Tommy Chen, no relation to Robert, who'd let me work on his delivery van in exchange for fresh vegetables from his garden. About the time I stayed up all night fixing a young woman's car for free because she was fleeing an abusive husband and needed to get 3 states away by morning. That's the work I'm most proud of, I said. Not the money I made or the reputation I built. It's the people I helped, the single mothers whose cars I fixed for cost, the kids I taught to change their own oil, the community I was part of. Robert listened to every word, asking questions, laughing at the funny parts, nodding solemnly at the hard times. And it felt good. God, it felt good to be heard. To have someone care about the life I'd lived, the work I'd done. The garage closed in 2010, I said. I was 57 and my hands weren't as steady as they used to be. The newer cars were all computers and sensors, nothing like the machines I'd grown up fixing. Marcus offered to help me keep it open. Said he'd invest, modernize it, turn it into a chain. But I said no. Why? Because it wouldn't have been mine anymore, I said simply. It would have been Marcus's business that I worked at, and I'd spent 35 years being my own boss. Wasn't ready to give that up even for my son. I took another sip of wine. Maybe that was pride. Maybe that was stupid. Sarah thought I should take his offer, said it would give us something to do together, a way to stay connected, but I couldn't. The garage was mine, my sweat, my name, my reputation. I'd rather close it down than watch it become something else. That's not pride, Robert said. That's integrity. Marcus didn't see it that way. He thought I was being stubborn, old-fashioned, said I was throwing away an opportunity. We had a fight about it, our first real fight in years. He accused me of not trusting him, of thinking his success was somehow less valid than mine. And maybe he was right, maybe I did think that. The memory stung. I told him that real success is building something with your own hands, not with other people's money. Told him that wearing a suit and pushing papers doesn't compare to the honest work of fixing what's broken. I was angry, and I said things I shouldn't have. What did he say? He said I was a dinosaur, that the world had moved on and I was too stubborn to see it, that his business degree and his company meant he'd accomplished more in 8 years than I had in 35. And then he left. Didn't talk to me for 6 months. I smiled bitterly. Sarah made us apologize to each other eventually. We had an awkward lunch, said the right words, pretended everything was fine, but it wasn't. That fight opened a crack between us that never really closed. He went back to his world of boardrooms and profit margins, and I went back to my empty garage and my dying wife. Do you regret it? Robert asked, not taking his offer. I thought about that, really thought about it. No, I said finally. I don't. Because if I'd let him take over the garage, I would have lost myself, would have become just another employee in a business that used to be mine. At least this way, I got to close it on my own terms. Got to lock the doors one last time and walk away knowing it was mine until the end. That takes courage. Or stupidity. Sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. I pushed my plate away, the steak half finished. The thing is, Robert, I'm tired. I'm tired of being angry at Marcus, tired of missing Sarah, tired of feeling like my life doesn't matter anymore. Tonight, when he hid me away like that, I thought maybe it was true. maybe I really am just an embarrassment, a relic of a simpler time that doesn't fit in the modern world. But then you showed up, I continued, and you remembered me, remembered one simple act of kindness from 30 years ago. And I realized something. Maybe my life does matter. Maybe the small things I did, the people I helped, maybe those ripples are still spreading. Maybe that's legacy enough. Robert reached across the table and gripped my hand. His grip was strong, certain. Harold, listen to me. Your life matters, not because of what your son accomplished or didn't accomplish, not because of the garage you built or the business you could have had. It matters because you're a good man who treated people with dignity, and that's rarer than you think. I felt something break open in my chest. Relief, maybe, or grief, or just the exhaustion of carrying so much pain for so long. Thank you, I whispered. We finished our dinner slowly, talking about easier things. Robert told me about his company, about the early struggles and the big breaks, about his own family, a wife of 30 years, 2 daughters in college, a life that seemed full and rich. He showed me pictures on his phone, and I felt a pang of envy. This is what success looks like, I thought. Not just money, but connection. Not just achievement, but love. When the check came, Robert didn't even look at it. Just handed over a black credit card like it was nothing. We walked out into the night air, and his driver was waiting. "Let me take you home," Robert said. "It's out of the way." "I don't care." So we drove through the city, through neighborhoods I'd lived in all my life, but looked different from the back seat of a Mercedes. The streets where I'd driven my Buick for repairs, the corners where I'd stopped for groceries, the park where Sarah and I used to walk on Sunday afternoons. All familiar, all strange. "I want to help you," Robert said as we drove. Not just tonight, but going forward, I owe you that." "You don't owe me anything," I protested. "You've already done more than—" "I owe you everything," he interrupted. "And more than that, I want to. So here's what I'm proposing. I'm going to move forward with the partnership discussion with Marcus, but there's going to be conditions." I looked at him sharply. "What kind of conditions?" "The kind that make him remember who he is," Robert said. "I'm going to require that Walker Industries establish a foundation, a charitable foundation dedicated to helping working-class families, scholarships for kids whose parents work with their hands, emergency funds for people who can't afford car repairs or medical bills, the kind of help that you gave to people all those years. Robert, and you're going to run it," he continued, "or at least be the public face of it, because I want Marcus to see every day what real legacy looks like. I want him to watch his father help people the way you always have, and I want him to feel ashamed every single time he thinks about hiding you away." The anger in Robert's voice surprised me. This wasn't just about business. This was personal for him. "I can't run a foundation," I said. "I don't know anything about nonprofits or—" "You know about people," Robert said. "You know about dignity and need and how to help without making someone feel small. That's all you need. I'll provide the money, the lawyers, the structure. You provide the heart." I didn't know what to say. The idea was overwhelming. Me running a foundation. Harold Walker, retired mechanic with grease still under his fingernails, deciding how to distribute money to people in need? "Why?" I asked again. "Why go through all this trouble?" Robert turned to look at me, and in the dim light of the car, I could see the intensity in his eyes. "Because 30 years ago, you taught me something important, that success means nothing if you forget where you came from. And I need to teach your son that same lesson, not for you, for him, because right now, he's heading down a path that ends in emptiness. I've seen it happen to too many people. They gain the world and lose their soul." He paused. "I'm going to offer Marcus a choice. He can have the partnership, the $50 million, the expansion of his company, but only if he agrees to the foundation, only if he agrees to put his father at the center of his business's charitable work, only if he agrees to publicly acknowledge where the Walker name really came from. And if he refuses, then I take my business elsewhere. Robert said simply. And I make sure everyone in the industry knows why. Not to hurt him, but to make a point that some things matter more than profit, that family matters, that honor matters. We pulled up to my house, a small 2-bedroom in a neighborhood that used to be nice, but had seen better days. The lawn needed mowing. The paint was peeling. It looked tired, like everything else in my life. Think about it, Robert said as I climbed out. Sleep on it. I'll call you tomorrow and we'll talk details. But Harold, this is happening. Whether you're comfortable with it or not, I'm not letting what happened tonight just fade away. Your son needs to learn a lesson, and I'm in a position to teach it. I stood on the curb, watching the Mercedes pull away, and I felt something I hadn't felt in 3 years. Possibility. The night was cool, the stars were out, and for the first time since Sarah died, I didn't feel completely alone. Inside the house was dark and quiet. I turned on the lights and everything looked the same as it had when I left. The worn furniture, the pictures on the wall, the empty space where Sarah used to be. But something felt different. I felt different. I poured myself a glass of water and sat at the kitchen table. The same table where I'd taught Marcus to read, where we'd had family dinners every night, where Sarah and I had made plans and dreamed dreams. I ran my hand over the scarred wood, feeling every nick and scratch, every memory embedded in the grain. My phone rang. I almost didn't answer, but then I saw the name, Marcus. I picked up. Hello? Dad. His voice was tight, strained. We need to talk. I'm listening. What you did tonight, what you and Mr. Chen did, that was embarrassing. You made me look bad in front of my investors, my board members, everyone important to the company. The anger came roaring back. I made you look bad? Marcus, you hid me behind a screen like I was something shameful. You told me not to sit with the guests because I'd ruin your image. And you're mad at me? I was trying to protect the company, he said defensively. You don't understand the pressures I'm under, the image we have to maintain. Image? I spat. That's all you care about, isn't it? How things look. Not how they are, but how they look. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, harsh and bitter. You want to talk about fair? Is it fair that I raised you, paid for your education, taught you everything I knew about integrity and hard work, and now you treat me like garbage? Is that fair? Silence on the other end. I got a call from Mr. Chen, Marcus said finally. He wants to meet tomorrow. Said he has a proposal for a partnership, but there are conditions. He wouldn't tell me what they are, just said I needed to bring you. So now you need me, I said. Now that there's $50 million on the line, suddenly the old man is useful again. Dad, please, I know I screwed up tonight. I know I hurt you, but this partnership, it's important. It could take Walker Industries to the next level. Can't we put this aside and move forward? Put it aside, just like that, sweep it under the rug and pretend it never happened, like every other time he'd disappointed me and I'd forgiven him because that's what fathers do. But not this time. No, I said quietly. No, we can't just put it aside because what happened tonight wasn't an accident or a mistake. It was a choice. You chose to hide me. You chose to value your image over your father, and choices have consequences, Marcus. What do you want from me? He asked, and I heard desperation creeping into his voice. An apology? Fine. I apologize. I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. There. Can we move on now? You think this is about my feelings? I asked. You think an apology makes up for the fact that you're ashamed of me, that you look at the man who raised you and see an embarrassment? I'm not ashamed of you. You are, I said. And you know what? I'm ashamed of you too. I'm ashamed that I raised a son who values money over people, who values image over integrity, who forgot every lesson I tried to teach him about what really matters. Dad, I'll come to the meeting tomorrow, I interrupted, because Robert asked me to, and he's earned my respect in one evening more than you have in the last 10 years. But don't expect me to make this easy for you. Don't expect me to smile and smooth things over and help you get what you want. Those days are over. I hung up before he could respond. My hand was shaking, my heart was pounding, but I felt strong. For the first time in years, I felt like Harold Walker again. Not a forgotten old man, but someone with value, someone with dignity. I slept better that night than I had since Sarah died. The next morning, Robert called at 9 o'clock sharp. "Good morning, Harold. Sleep well?" "Better than expected," I admitted. "Good, because we have work to do. I've scheduled a meeting with Marcus for 2 o'clock this afternoon at my office. Can you be there?" "I'll be there." "Excellent. Wear whatever makes you comfortable. This isn't about impressing anyone. This is about showing Marcus who you are." I chose my work clothes. Not the good suit from last night, but the jeans and flannel shirt I used to wear in the garage. Clean, pressed, but unmistakably working class. If Marcus was ashamed of who I was, then I was going to make sure he saw exactly who I was. Robert's office was downtown in a gleaming tower of glass and steel. The lobby alone was bigger than my entire house. A receptionist directed me to the 42nd floor, where Robert's assistant, a crisp young woman named Amanda, greeted me warmly. "Mr. Walker, Mr. Chen is expecting you. Please follow me." Robert's office was enormous. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the city, expensive art on the walls, a conference table that could seat 20 people. But what struck me most was the photo on his desk, a young man in grease-stained coveralls standing next to a beat-up Ford Ranger, me, from 30 years ago. "You kept that?" I asked, surprised. Robert stood from behind his desk, smiling. "Took it the day you fixed my truck. You probably don't remember, but my girlfriend at the time, my wife now, took that photo while I was paying you. Said I should remember the man who gave me my start." She was right. Before I could respond, Amanda announced, "Mr. Marcus Walker is here." "Send him in," Robert said. Marcus walked in wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly pension. His jaw was tight, his shoulders stiff. He looked like a man walking to his own execution. Vanessa was with him, dressed in a power suit and wearing an expression that could freeze lava. "Mr. Chen," Marcus said, extending his hand. "Thank you for seeing us." "Marcus, Vanessa." Robert shook their hands, but his tone was cool, professional. "Please, sit." They sat on one side of the conference table. Robert and I sat on the other. The battle lines were drawn. "I'll get straight to the point," Robert said. "Chen Global Transport is interested in a distribution partnership with Walker Industries. The deal would be worth approximately $50 million over 5 years, with options to expand. It would significantly increase your market reach and open doors to markets you've been trying to break into for years." Marcus leaned forward eagerly. "We're very interested in, however," Robert continued, cutting him off. "The partnership comes with conditions. Non-negotiable conditions." Marcus's expression shifted. "What kind of conditions?" "First, Walker Industries will establish a charitable foundation, the Walker Legacy Foundation, dedicated to helping working-class families, scholarships, emergency funds, community support. The foundation will be funded with 5% of the partnership revenues, roughly $2.5 million over the contract term." Vanessa's eyes widened. "That's a significant amount. Second," Robert continued, ignoring her, "Harold Walker will be the founder and public face of this foundation. He will have full autonomy over how funds are distributed, with support from legal and administrative staff that I'll help you hire. His name, his story, his values will be the foundation's mission statement." Marcus looked at me, then back at Robert. "Dad's never run a foundation before. Wouldn't it make more sense to—" "Third," Robert said, his voice hardening, "Walker Industries will publicly acknowledge Harold Walker as the founder of the Walker family values, press releases, company website, annual reports. Everywhere the Walker name appears, there will be clear recognition that the company's principles come from Harold's 35 years as a mechanic and small business owner." The room went silent. Marcus's face was pale. Vanessa looked like she'd been slapped. You want us to center our corporate identity around. Vanessa struggled to find words that wouldn't sound terrible. Around a mechanic? I want you to tell the truth, Robert said coldly, that your success is built on the foundation of a man who taught you everything about integrity, hard work, and human dignity. A man who apparently you're ashamed to acknowledge. We're not ashamed, Marcus started. You hid him behind a screen, Robert said flatly. At your own event, your own father, you told him he'd ruin your image. Those aren't the actions of a man who's proud of where he came from. Marcus's face flushed red. That was a misunderstanding. It was a choice, I said quietly. Everyone turned to look at me. You made a choice, Marcus, and now you have to make another one. I stood up, walking to the window. The city stretched out below. Thousands of lives, thousands of stories, all playing out in those buildings and streets. Sarah and I used to come downtown sometimes just to walk and people watch, to feel part of something bigger. I'm 72 years old, I said, not turning around. I don't have a lot of time left, 5 years, 10 if I'm lucky, and I've been spending those years alone, forgotten, wondering if my life meant anything, wondering if the sacrifices I made, the values I tried to pass on, if any of it mattered. I turned back to face them. Last night, I got my answer. Robert remembered. After 30 years, he remembered what I did for him. Not because it was big or impressive, but because it was kind. Because I treated him like a human being when no one else would. I looked at Marcus. You're my son. I love you. I always will. But I don't like you very much right now. Because you've forgotten something important. Success without humanity is just emptiness. Money without character is just paper. And a name without honor is just noise. Dad, Marcus's voice cracked. Robert's conditions aren't about punishing you, I continued. They're about giving you a chance to remember who you are, to do something meaningful with your success, to build something that matters more than profit margins and market share. I walked back to the table, placing my hands on the polished surface. So, here's what's going to happen. You're going to accept these conditions, all of them, not because you need the partnership, though you do, but because it's the right thing to do, because helping people matters, because honoring your roots matters, because I matter. Vanessa spoke up, her voice tight. And if we refuse? Then you refuse, Robert said simply. And I take my partnership to one of your competitors, and I make sure everyone knows why, not to hurt you, but because I only do business with companies that share my values. He stood, walking around the table. But more than that, Marcus, you'll have made a choice. You'll have chosen money over family, image over integrity, and you'll have to live with that. Maybe it won't bother you today or tomorrow, but someday, when you're 72 and alone, you'll remember this moment, and you'll realize what you gave up. The silence in that room was suffocating. Marcus stared at the table, his jaw working. Vanessa looked furious, but she was smart enough to know they were cornered. This wasn't just about a business deal anymore. This was about legacy, about family, about what kind of man Marcus wanted to be. Finally, Marcus looked up at me, really looked at me, maybe for the first time in years. I saw something in his eyes, pain, shame, maybe even understanding. You're right, he said quietly. Dad, you're right. I've been an asshole. Vanessa gasped. Marcus, no, Vanessa, I have been. He stood up, walking toward me. I've been so focused on building the company, on being successful, on proving that I'm more than just a mechanic's son, that I forgot the most important thing. Being a mechanic's son is something to be proud of. He stopped in front of me, and I saw tears in his eyes. You worked 16-hour days to put me through college. You taught me about integrity and hard work and treating people with respect. And I repaid you by being ashamed of you, by hiding you, by treating you like you were worthless. His voice broke. I'm so sorry, Dad. I'm so sorry for last night, and for all the nights before that when I was too busy to call, too important to visit, too successful to remember where I came from. You deserve better. You deserve better. I wanted to stay angry, wanted to hold on to the hurt and make him suffer a little longer. But he was my son, my boy, and seeing him cry broke something open in me. Yes, I said, I do deserve better. He nodded, wiping at his eyes. We'll accept the conditions, all of them, the foundation, the recognition, everything. Not because of the partnership, but because it's right, because you're right. He turned to Robert. Thank you for seeing what I couldn't see, for valuing my father when I didn't, for giving me a chance to make this right. Robert nodded. Don't thank me. Thank your father for raising a son capable of admitting when he's wrong. That's rarer than you think. Vanessa stood up, and I could see her struggling with this. She wasn't used to losing, wasn't used to being wrong, but she was smart enough to know when to fold. Harold, she said stiffly, I apologize for my behavior last night. It was inappropriate and disrespectful. I hope you can forgive me. It wasn't warm, it wasn't heartfelt, but it was something. We'll see, I said, because I wasn't ready to forgive just yet. Forgiveness has to be earned, and a few words in a conference room wasn't enough. The rest of the meeting was business. Contracts to be drawn up, timelines to be established, logistics to be worked out. Robert's lawyers would handle the foundation paperwork. Marcus would work with his marketing team on the public recognition. It would all take time, but the wheels were in motion. When we finally left Robert's office, Marcus asked if he could drive me home. I almost said no, but something in his face made me agree. We drove in silence for a while, the city sliding past outside the windows. Finally, Marcus spoke. I miss her, he said quietly. Mom, I miss her every day. So do I. She would have been so disappointed in me, he continued, for how I treated you, for last night, for all of it. Yes, I agreed. She would have. She used to tell me I was getting too big for my britches, Marcus said, a sad smile on his face. Said I was forgetting what really mattered. I told her she didn't understand modern business, that things were different now, but she was right. They're not different. People are still people. Family is still family. We pulled up to my house, but Marcus didn't unlock the doors. Can I come in? He asked, just for a little while. I'd like to talk, really talk, like we used to. I looked at him, at the expensive suit and the graying hair and the lines around his eyes that made him look older than he should. But underneath all that, I could still see the boy who used to sit in my garage, asking a million questions, dreaming of the future. Okay, I said. Come in. We sat at the kitchen table, and I made coffee the way Sarah used to, strong and black, the way working men drink it. Marcus looked around the house, really seeing it for the first time in years. Nothing's changed, he said. Why would it? I asked. I'm still the same person I've always been. But I've changed, Marcus said, and not for the better. We talked for hours, talked about Sarah, about the garage, about the years that had passed. Marcus told me about the pressures of running a company, about the constant fear of failure, about how he'd let Vanessa convince him that image was everything. Marcus talked, and I listened, really listened. He told me about the sleepless nights, the anxiety attacks he hid from everyone, the way success felt more like a burden than an achievement. He told me about looking at himself in the mirror and not recognizing the man staring back, about how somewhere along the way he'd traded his soul for stock options and forgot why he'd started the company in the first place. I wanted to make you proud, he said finally, his voice raw. Everything I built, it was supposed to prove that your sacrifices weren't wasted, that the mechanic's son could become something more. But you were already something, I said quietly. You were my son. That was enough. He broke down then, really broke down, put his head in his hands and sobbed like he hadn't sobbed since he was a child, and I let him. Because sometimes a man needs to cry out all the poison before he can heal. When he finally composed himself, he looked at me with red-rimmed eyes. How do I fix this, Dad? How do I become the man you taught me to be? You start, I said, by remembering that success isn't about how much money you make or how impressive your title sounds. It's about who you are when no one's watching. It's about treating the janitor with the same respect you give the CEO. It's about understanding that every person you meet has dignity and worth, regardless of what they can do for you. I poured us both more coffee. Your mother understood that. She was the kindest person I ever knew, and she taught you the same lessons I did. But somewhere along the way, you forgot. You let the world convince you that kindness is weakness and that compassion is naive. Vanessa says, he started. I don't care what Vanessa says. I interrupted. I love my daughter-in-law because you love her, but she's got her priorities backwards. She thinks image is everything because she's afraid that without the image, there's nothing underneath. But you've got something underneath. You just need to remember what it is. Marcus nodded slowly. The foundation. I want to make it work. Not just because Mr. Chen requires it, but because I want to. I want to do something that matters. Then we'll make it work together, I said. But understand something, Marcus? This isn't about me getting revenge or you doing penance. This is about genuinely helping people. If you're not committed to that, really committed, then don't waste your time or mine. I'm committed, he said firmly. I want to be the man Mom thought I could be, the man you raised me to be. We talked until the sun started to set, until the coffee pot was empty and the words had all been said. When Marcus finally left, he hugged me, really hugged me. Not that stiff formal embrace from the night before. He held on tight like he was afraid I'd disappear if he let go. I love you, Dad, he whispered. I love you too, son. After he left, I sat alone in the gathering darkness and felt something I hadn't felt in years. Hope. Not the desperate, grasping hope of a lonely old man, but real hope. The kind that comes from seeing someone change, from watching possibility become reality. The next few weeks were a whirlwind. Robert's lawyers drew up the partnership agreements and the foundation paperwork. Marcus and I met multiple times to discuss the foundation's mission and structure. Vanessa, to her credit, didn't fight it. She even offered some surprisingly good suggestions about fundraising and public relations. We decided the Walker Legacy Foundation would focus on 3 areas: educational scholarships for children of blue-collar workers, emergency assistance for families facing unexpected financial crises, and small business grants for people trying to start their own enterprises. Everything I wished had existed when I was struggling to make ends meet. Robert was true to his word. He provided the initial funding, connected us with experienced nonprofit administrators, and guided us through the complex process of establishing a charitable organization. But he also stepped back when necessary, letting Marcus and me figure things out together. Working with my son again felt strange at first. We'd spent so many years apart, operating in different worlds. But slowly, day by day, meeting by meeting, we found our rhythm. Marcus would come to my house, and we'd sit at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd taught him to read, planning the foundation's future. He asked my opinion on things, actually asked and actually listened. He took notes when I told stories about the people I'd helped over the years, trying to understand what real need looked like. He met with social workers and community organizers, learning about the struggles of working families from people who lived those struggles every day. I watched my son transform. The arrogance faded, the distance closed. He started showing up in jeans instead of suits, started talking about people instead of profit margins, started remembering who he'd been before success had changed him. But it wasn't all smooth. There were arguments. There were moments when his old attitudes surfaced, when he'd suggest something that sounded good on paper, but showed he didn't really understand what we were trying to do, and I'd call him on it every single time. This isn't about good PR, I'd remind him. This isn't about making Walker Industries look charitable. This is about actually helping people who need help. If your heart's not in it, then we're wasting everyone's time. He'd get frustrated. Sometimes he'd argue back. But he'd also listen and learn and try harder the next time. That's all I could ask for. The foundation's public launch was scheduled for 6 months after that meeting in Robert's office. It would be held at a community center in the neighborhood where I'd run my garage, not some fancy hotel ballroom, but a real place where real people gathered. Marcus wanted to hold it at the Grand Pearson Hotel to show everyone that Walker Industries was serious about this, but I refused. These people won't feel comfortable at the Pearson, I told them. They'll feel like they're being judged, like they're charity cases being paraded around for rich people's entertainment. We do this in their world, not yours. He understood. That was the difference now. He actually understood. The weeks leading up to the launch, Marcus asked if he could interview me for the foundation's website and promotional materials. Not a professional interviewer, but him. He wanted to record my stories, to understand my life in a way he never had when Mom was alive, to bridge the gap between us. So we sat in my living room with a video camera and he asked questions about growing up poor during the Depression, about serving in Vietnam, about meeting Sarah at a church dance and knowing within 5 minutes that she was the one, about opening the garage with nothing but determination and a dream, about the hundreds of people I'd helped over 35 years, their stories and struggles and triumphs. Marcus cried during some of it, laughed during other parts, but mostly he just listened, really listened, like he was hearing his father's voice for the first time. I didn't know any of this, he said when we finished. How did I not know any of this? Because you never asked, I said simply. You were too busy building your future to care about my past. I'm sorry. I know you are. The footage became the centerpiece of the foundation's mission video. Not some slick corporate production, but raw, honest storytelling. Me in my living room talking about dignity and hardship and the power of small kindnesses. Marcus said it was the most powerful thing he'd ever seen. This is who we are, he told his board of directors when presenting the foundation. This is what Walker Industries stands for. Not because it's good business, though it is, but because it's right, because my father taught me that success without humanity is meaningless. The board approved everything. Even the skeptics couldn't argue with the passion in Marcus's voice or the authenticity of the mission. And when Robert Chen personally endorsed the foundation, promising additional support from his own company, any remaining doubts evaporated. The day of the launch arrived cold and clear. I woke up early, nervous in a way I hadn't been in years. This was my moment, my chance to show that my life had meant something, that the values I'd lived by still mattered in a world that seemed to have left them behind. Marcus picked me up at noon. He'd rented a modest sedan instead of his usual luxury car, another small sign that he was trying. We drove to the community center together, not saying much, just comfortable in each other's presence in a way we hadn't been in decades. The community center was packed, not with wealthy donors or business associates, but with real people, working families, single mothers, elderly couples, young people trying to start businesses. The people the foundation was meant to serve. They filled the folding chairs, stood against the walls, craned their necks to see the small stage at the front. There were also reporters, local news stations, newspapers, even a few national media outlets who'd heard about the unusual foundation started by a retired mechanic and his CEO's son. Robert Chen's involvement had drawn attention, but it was the story itself that captured people's imagination. The working-class father, the successful son, the redemption and reconciliation. But I wasn't thinking about any of that as I stood backstage, waiting to go on. I was thinking about Sarah, wishing she could be here to see this, wishing she could see Marcus finally becoming the man she'd always believed he could be. Dad? Marcus appeared beside me. You ready? As ready as I'll ever be. You're going to be great. He squeezed my shoulder. I'm proud of you. I should have said that more often over the years, but I'm saying it now. I'm proud to be your son. Those words, the ones I'd waited years to hear, nearly broke me, but I held it together. There'd be time for tears later. The mayor spoke first, welcoming everyone and praising the foundation's mission. Then Robert Chen took the stage, talking about how a mechanic's kindness 30 years ago had changed his life and inspired this moment. He told the story beautifully, and I could see people in the audience wiping their eyes. Then it was Marcus's turn. He walked to the microphone in his jeans and button-down shirt, looking more like the boy I'd raised than the CEO he'd become. "My name is Marcus Walker," he began, "and I'm here today to tell you about my father." He talked about my life, my work, my values. He talked about the lessons I'd taught him and the lessons he'd forgotten. He talked about success and failure, about losing his way and finding it again. And then he said something that made my chest tighten with emotion. 6 months ago, I made a terrible mistake. I was hosting an event and my father came, and I was ashamed of him, ashamed of his worn clothes and his working class background and the fact that he didn't fit the image I'd created for myself. So I hid him. I literally hid my own father away like he was something embarrassing. The audience stirred. This wasn't the usual corporate speech full of platitudes and carefully crafted messages. This was raw confession. "I'm telling you this," Marcus continued, "because I want you to understand what this foundation is really about. It's about remembering that every person has dignity, that a man in work boots and a flannel shirt has just as much value as a man in a $1,000 suit. That success isn't about how much money you make or how important your title sounds. It's about how you treat people when there's nothing in it for you." He paused, his voice thick with emotion. "My father lived those values every day for 35 years. He helped people who couldn't pay him back. He gave his time and his skills and his kindness to anyone who needed it. And he did it not for recognition or reward, but because it was right." "And I forgot that," Marcus said. "I got so caught up in building my company and protecting my image that I forgot the most important thing, that being Harold Walker's son is the greatest success I'll ever achieve." He gestured toward the wings. "Dad, will you come out here?" I walked onto that stage and the audience erupted in applause. Not polite corporate applause, but real, genuine appreciation. People stood, they cheered, they whistled, and I felt something inside me that had been broken start to heal. Marcus embraced me on that stage, in front of all those people and all those cameras, and this time there was no stiffness, no formality. Just a son hugging his father and letting the world see that he was proud. When the applause finally died down, I stepped to the microphone. I'd prepared a speech, written out note cards, and everything. But standing there, looking at all those faces, I forgot every word I'd planned to say. "My name is Harold Walker," I began. "I'm 72 years old. I was a mechanic for 35 years, a husband for 47, and a father for 48. And until 6 months ago, I thought my life didn't matter much anymore." I had to pause, my throat tight. I thought I was just taking up space, just an old man with outdated ideas and rough hands, and nothing left to contribute. My wife was gone, my kids had moved on, the world had changed, and I didn't know where I fit anymore. But then something happened. I continued. I got reminded that small kindnesses ripple outward, that the good you do doesn't disappear. It echoes through time, touching lives you'll never even know about. And I realized that my life did matter, not because of anything big or impressive, but because I tried to treat people with dignity, because I helped when I could, because I believe that everyone deserves respect regardless of what they can do for you. I looked at Marcus. My son forgot that for a while. Success changed him, made him think that image was more important than integrity, but he remembered. And now we're here together trying to build something that honors the values I tried to live by and that he's learning to live by again. I turned back to the audience. This foundation isn't about charity. It's about dignity. It's about recognizing that working people, mechanics and waitresses and factory workers and janitors, these people are the backbone of our society. They deserve more than our spare change and our pity. They deserve our respect, our support, our recognition that their work matters and their struggles are real. The room was silent except for the occasional sniffle. I could see tears streaming down faces, people nodding in agreement. So here's what we're going to do. I said, we're going to help people, really help them, not with handouts that make them feel small, but with support that empowers them. Scholarships so their kids can go to college, emergency funds so one bad month doesn't destroy them, business grants so they can chase their dreams like I chased mine 40 years ago. And we're going to do it with respect, I continued. No applications that make you feel like a beggar, no interviews where you have to prove you're worthy. Just help, given freely with dignity intact, because that's what I would have wanted when I was struggling. That's what everyone deserves. I gripped the podium, feeling the weight of every year, every struggle, every small kindness I'd ever given or received. I don't know how much time I have left. None of us do. But I want to spend whatever time I have doing this, helping people, honoring my wife's memory by living the values she taught me, and working with my son to build something that will outlast both of us. My voice broke. Sarah, my wife, she used to say that the measure of a life isn't what you accumulate, but what you give away. She was right. She was always right, and this foundation is my way of giving away what I've learned, what I've lived, what I believe. I stepped back from the microphone, exhausted and exhilarated and more alive than I'd felt in years. The applause started again, but it was different this time. Quieter, more reverent. People weren't just clapping, they were acknowledging something deeper, a shared understanding that we're all in this together, that dignity matters, that kindness counts. After the formal presentations, we opened the floor to questions and applications. People lined up to share their stories, their needs, their dreams. A single mother whose car had broken down and she couldn't afford to fix it. She needed it to get to work. A young man who wanted to start a landscaping business but didn't have the money for equipment. An elderly couple facing medical bills that would bankrupt them. Marcus and I listened to every story, really listened, and we helped. Right there. That day, we started helping. We arranged for the single mother's car to be fixed at my old garage, actually, which was now run by one of my former apprentices, Tony Martinez. We approved the landscaping business grant on the spot. We connected the elderly couple with resources to manage their medical debt. It wasn't systematic, it wasn't efficient, but it was human, and that's what mattered. The event lasted 4 hours. By the end, my feet hurt and my voice was hoarse, and I was more tired than I'd been in years. But I was also happier than I'd been since Sarah died. This was purpose. This was meaning. This was proof that my life had mattered. As people filed out, many of them stopped to shake my hand or thank me. Some just touched my arm, unable to find words. One older woman, her face weathered by hard years, gripped my hand and said, "Thank you for seeing us. Thank you for remembering that we matter." I couldn't speak, just nodded and held her hand and felt the full weight of what we'd started. After everyone left, it was just Marcus, Robert, and me in the empty community center. We stood among the folding chairs and the leftover refreshments, exhausted but satisfied. "You did good, Harold," Robert said. "Sarah would be proud." "We did good," I corrected. "None of this happens without you." "It happens because of you," Robert insisted. "I just opened a door. You're the one walking through it." Marcus put his arm around my shoulders. "Can I take you home, Dad?" "Yeah," I said. "Take me home." We drove in comfortable silence, the city lights sliding past. When we pulled up to my house, Marcus didn't immediately unlock the doors. "Dad," he said quietly. "Thank you." "For what?" "For not giving up on me, for giving me a chance to make things right, for—" His voice caught. "For still being here." I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw not the successful CEO or the man who'd hurt me, but the boy who'd sat in my garage asking questions, the young man who'd called me from college just to hear my voice, the person I'd raised with love and hope and dreams for his future. "You're my son," I said simply. Where else would I be? The months that followed were the busiest and most fulfilling of my life. The foundation grew rapidly. More people came forward with needs and stories. More donors contributed, more volunteers wanted to help. What had started as a condition of a business deal became something real and vital and transformative. Marcus worked alongside me every step of the way. He'd rearranged his schedule at Walker Industries, delegating more responsibilities so he could spend time on the foundation. Vanessa, seeing the change in him and the positive press coverage, became more supportive. She even volunteered at some of our events, though she'd never be comfortable in blue-collar spaces the way Marcus was learning to be. I reconnected with old friends from the neighborhood. People I hadn't seen in years started showing up at foundation events, volunteering their time, spreading the word. The community I'd thought had forgotten me welcomed me back with open arms. My daughter Jennifer called more often. She'd seen the news coverage and the mission video. "Dad," she said during one call, her voice thick with emotion, "I'm so proud of you. I had no idea. I didn't know how much you'd done, how many people you'd helped. I was just living my life, sweetheart." "No," she insisted, "you were living a meaningful life, and I'm sorry I didn't see that. I'm sorry I let distance and time and my own busy life keep me from really knowing you." She flew out for a visit the next month, bringing her husband and kids, my grandchildren I'd only seen in pictures. We spent a week together, and I got to show them my world and tell them my stories, pass on the values I'd tried to live by. The youngest, a boy of 8 named Charlie, reminded me so much of Marcus at that age, full of questions, fascinated by how things worked. I took him to my old garage, now called Walker and Sons, run by Tony Martinez, and showed him around. "Grandpa," Charlie asked, watching Tony work on an engine, "did you really do this every day?" "Every day for 35 years, I confirmed. "That's so cool," he breathed. Hearing my grandson call me Grandpa, seeing the admiration in his eyes, feeling connected to a future I'd thought I wouldn't be part of, it was a gift I hadn't known I needed. Robert Chen became a regular presence in my life. We'd have dinner once a month, just the two of us talking about business and family and life. He introduced me to other successful people he'd helped over the years, creating a network of support for the foundation. But more than that, he became a true friend, the kind of friend I'd thought I was too old to make. "You know what's interesting?" Robert said during one of our dinners. "That young man who pushed a broken truck into your garage in 1995, he was terrified. Thought he'd fail, thought he'd never amount to anything, and then you helped him, and everything changed." He paused, his eyes distant with memory. "But it wasn't just fixing the truck. It was how you talked to me, like I mattered, like my dreams were valid, like I was worth your time and respect. Do you have any idea how powerful that is? To be seen and valued when you feel invisible?" "I do now," I said quietly, thinking of that night behind the screen at the Grand Pearson Hotel. "That's why I came back for you," Robert continued, "because I know what it's like to feel invisible, and I couldn't stand seeing someone who'd given me visibility being treated like he didn't exist. Couldn't stand watching your own son do to you what the world had tried to do to me. You saved me," I said simply. "You and Marcus, you both saved me. From loneliness, from insignificance, from disappearing without making a difference." I don't say this enough, but thank you, Robert. Thank you for remembering. Thank you for caring. Thank you for being the kind of man who doesn't forget his debts. "We're even," Robert said firmly. "More than even. You gave me a start. I gave you a new chapter. and together we're writing a story about what really matters in life. The Foundation's first anniversary arrived faster than I expected. We'd helped over 500 families in that first year, provided 63 scholarships, funded 28 small businesses, paid for emergency car repairs, medical bills, rent assistance, and countless other needs. But the numbers didn't tell the real story. The real story was in the letters we received. The single mother who wrote to say that fixing her car saved her job and changed her life. The young man whose landscaping business was now thriving and employing 3 other people. The elderly veteran who could finally afford his medications and sent us a picture of him smiling with his grandchildren. Each letter, each thank you, each life touched, it all added up to something I'd been searching for since Sarah died. Proof that my life mattered. Proof that the values I'd lived by weren't outdated or naive. Proof that kindness still counted in a world that often seemed cruel. For the anniversary celebration, we returned to the same community center. It was packed again, but this time with familiar faces. People we'd helped over the year. Volunteers who'd joined our cause. Donors who believed in our mission. It felt like family. Marcus gave a speech about what the foundation had accomplished, but he also talked about what it had taught him. I learned that success isn't about what you achieve for yourself, but what you enable for others. I learned that my father's life, a life spent in a garage, helping people one car at a time, that life had more impact than anything I could build in a boardroom. He looked at me with tears in his eyes. Dad taught me that dignity isn't something you earn with degrees or titles or money. It's something you give to everyone you meet, and it's something you get back when you remember who you are and where you came from. When it was my turn to speak, I kept it short. A year ago, I was a lonely old man who thought his life was over. Today, I'm surrounded by family and friends and purpose. A year ago, I thought I didn't matter anymore. Today, I know that every life matters, every kindness counts, every small act of dignity ripples outward in ways we can't even imagine. I paused, looking at Marcus. My son and I lost our way for a while. We forgot how to talk to each other, how to see each other, how to love each other the way we needed to, but we found our way back. And if we can do that, anyone can. The crowd applauded, but I wasn't finished. I want to tell you something I've learned in my 73 years on this earth. It's never too late. Never too late to change. Never too late to reconnect. Never too late to start living the life you were meant to live. I thought my meaningful years were behind me. I was wrong. These past 12 months have been the most meaningful of my life. I felt emotion rising in my chest, threatening to overwhelm me. My wife, Sarah, she's not here to see this, but I feel her presence in everything we do, every person we help, every life we touch, every moment of dignity we restore. It's honoring her memory. It's living the values she taught me. It's proof that love doesn't die when the person dies. It lives on in how we treat each other, in what we build together, in the legacy we leave behind. My voice broke completely. So thank you. Thank you for believing in this mission. Thank you for seeing the value in an old mechanic's dream. Thank you for proving that in a world that often seems cold and cruel, kindness still matters. Dignity still matters. People still matter. I stepped away from the microphone, unable to continue. Marcus was there immediately, holding me up, holding me together. And the room erupted, not just in applause, but in something deeper. Acknowledgement, understanding, shared humanity. After the event, as people lingered and shared stories and celebrated together, I found a quiet corner and just watched. Watched Marcus laugh with volunteers. Watched families who'd been helped by the foundation connect with each other, forming their own support network. Watched Robert Chen talk animatedly with a young entrepreneur about business plans and dreams. This was legacy, not money or buildings or companies, but this, people helping people. Connections made, lives changed. a community built on the simple idea that everyone deserves dignity. I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Tony Martinez, my old apprentice, who now ran the garage. "Mr. Walker," he said, "I wanted to thank you, not just for the foundation, but for everything. You taught me my trade, yeah, but you taught me more than that. You taught me how to be a good man." "Tony, no, listen," he insisted. "When I was 17, I was heading down a bad path, hanging with the wrong crowd, making bad choices. But you gave me a job, gave me purpose, treated me with respect when nobody else would, and that changed my life." He gestured to the room. "All these people you're helping through the foundation, that's what you've been doing your whole life. One person at a time, you've been changing the world. And I just wanted you to know that I see it. We all see it." After he left, I sat there with tears streaming down my face, feeling the weight of a life well lived settle over me like a warm blanket. I wasn't perfect. I'd made mistakes, had regrets, had moments I wished I could take back, but I'd tried. God knows I'd tried to be a good man, to treat people with dignity, to make the world a little better than I found it. And maybe, just maybe, I'd succeeded. The drive home that night with Marcus was quiet. Not the uncomfortable silence of strangers, but the comfortable quiet of two people who understand each other. When we pulled up to my house, I didn't immediately get out. "Marcus," I said, "I'm proud of you. I should say it more often, but I'm proud of the man you've become. Not the CEO, not the successful businessman, but the son who admitted he was wrong, the man who chose family over image, the person who's learning to live with integrity." "Dad," his voice was thick with emotion. "I'm not finished," I interrupted gently. "I'm also sorry for the times I was too hard on you. Sorry for expecting you to be exactly like me instead of letting you be yourself. Sorry for holding on to anger when I should have been offering grace. We both made mistakes, but we're fixing them together." Marcus pulled me into a fierce embrace. "I love you, Dad, and I'm going to keep showing up, not just for the foundation, but for you, for us, for the family Mom wanted us to be." "I know you will, son. I know you will." Inside my house, I sat in my worn recliner and looked at Sarah's picture on the mantel. She was smiling, caught mid-laugh at some joke I'd told. God, I missed her. Missed her voice, her touch, her wisdom, her, presence. "We did it, sweetheart," I whispered to her picture. "We raised a good son. He lost his way for a while, but he found it again. You'd be so proud of him, so proud of what he's building, of who he's becoming." I felt the familiar ache of grief, but it was different now, mixed with something else, gratitude maybe for the years we'd had, for the love we'd shared, for the legacy we'd created together. "I miss you every day," I continued, "but I'm okay now. I'm not just existing anymore. I'm living, really living, and I'm going to keep living, keep helping people, keep working with Marcus, keep honoring your memory until it's my time to come home to you." I closed my eyes, exhausted and content in equal measure. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new people to help, new stories to hear. But tonight, I could rest, could feel the satisfaction of a day well spent, a life well lived, a purpose well served. The phone rang. It was Jennifer. "Dad, I just wanted to call and tell you that you were amazing today. The kids can't stop talking about Grandpa the hero." "I'm not a hero, sweetheart." "Yes, you are," she insisted. "You're my hero. You always have been. I'm sorry I didn't tell you that enough." We talked for an hour. She told me about her life, her struggles, her dreams, and I listened, really listened the way I should have been doing all along. When we finally hung up, I felt another piece of my broken heart start to heal. This is what redemption looks like, I thought. Not a grand gesture or a single moment, but a series of small reconnections. A gradual rebuilding of trust and love and family. It's messy and imperfect and takes time, but it's real. The months continued to pass. The foundation grew. More lives were touched. More stories were told. Marcus and I developed a rhythm, a partnership that felt natural and right. We'd meet for breakfast twice a week, not at fancy restaurants, but at a local diner where the coffee was strong and the eggs were greasy and the waitress knew our names. We'd talk about foundation, business, but also about life, about his struggles with balancing work and family, about my memories of Sarah and the early years, about our regrets and our hopes and our fears. We were rebuilding our relationship one conversation at a time, and it felt like a privilege. Vanessa even warmed up to me eventually. She'd never be the daughter-in-law who called every day or dropped by unannounced, but she made an effort, invited me to family dinners, asked my advice on raising their teenage daughter, my granddaughter Emma, who I'd barely known before all this started. Small gestures, but they mattered. Emma, it turned out, was curious about her grandfather. She started volunteering at the foundation events, and I got to know her, got to see Sarah's kindness reflected in her eyes, Marcus's determination in her spirit. She asked questions about my life, my work, my values, and I told her stories, passing on the legacy that almost died with me. "Grandpa," she asked one day while we were sorting donation items, "do you think people are basically good?" I thought about that, thought about the cruelty I'd experienced, the pain of being forgotten and dismissed. But I also thought about Robert Chen's loyalty, Marcus's redemption, the countless people who'd volunteered their time and donated their resources to help strangers. "I think people are complicated," I said finally. "We're capable of both cruelty and kindness, selfishness and generosity. But I also think that most people, given a chance and treated with dignity, will choose kindness. That's been my experience anyway." She nodded thoughtfully. "Is that why the foundation works? Because you treat people with dignity?" "Smart girl," I smiled. "Yes, that's exactly why it works." Robert Chen continued to be a constant presence and supporter. His company's partnership with Walker Industries had exceeded everyone's expectations, but more importantly, the friendship between our families had deepened. Robert's daughters came to volunteer. His wife joined our board of directors. We celebrated holidays together, supported each other through challenges, built something that transcended business. "You know what's interesting?" Robert said one evening over dinner. "That young man who pushed a broken truck into your garage 30 years ago, he was terrified, thought he'd fail, thought he'd never amount to anything, and then you helped him, and everything changed." He paused, his eyes distant with memory. "But it wasn't just fixing the truck, it was how you talked to me, like I mattered, like my dreams were valid, like I was worth your time and respect. Do you have any idea how powerful that is? To be seen and valued when you feel invisible?" "I do now," I said quietly, thinking of that night behind the screen at the Grand Pearson Hotel. "That's why I came back for you," Robert continued, "because I know what it's like to feel invisible, and I couldn't stand seeing someone who'd given me visibility being treated like he didn't exist. Couldn't stand watching your own son do to you what the world had tried to do to me. You saved me," I said simply. "You and Marcus, you both saved me. From loneliness, from insignificance, from disappearing without making a difference. I don't say this enough, but thank you, Robert. Thank you for remembering. Thank you for caring. Thank you for being the kind of man who doesn't forget his debts." "We're even," Robert said firmly. "More than even. You gave me a start. I gave you a new chapter, and together we're writing a story about what really matters in life." On my 74th birthday, Marcus threw me a party. Not at the Grand Pearson Hotel, but at the community center where we'd launched the foundation. It was a small gathering. Family, close friends, foundation volunteers, people we'd helped over the past 2 years. Jennifer flew in from Seattle with her whole family. Emma baked me a cake. Charlie gave me a drawing he'd made of me in my garage, wrench in hand, with the caption, "My hero grandpa," written in crayon at the bottom. Even Vanessa seemed genuinely happy to be there, laughing and mingling with people she would have avoided 2 years ago, but the best gift came from Marcus. He stood up in front of everyone and cleared his throat. "Dad," he said, his voice wavering slightly, 2 years ago, I was a different person. I was successful by most measures: money, status, thriving company. But I'd lost something along the way. I'd lost sight of what really matters. And worst of all, I'd lost respect for the man who taught me everything about being a good person. He paused, collecting himself. That night at the hotel, that was the lowest point of my life. Not because of the business embarrassment, but because I'd hurt the person who loved me most. I'd treated my own father like he was worthless, and I almost lost him forever. Marcus looked directly at me, tears streaming down his face. But you gave me another chance. You and Robert Chen and this foundation, you gave me a chance to become the man you raised me to be. And I want you to know that I'm grateful every single day for that chance. He held up a framed document. This is the updated incorporation papers for Walker Industries. I've officially added a mission statement that reads, founded on the principles of Harold Walker, integrity, dignity, and service to others. Your name, Dad, your values, forever part of the company. The room erupted in applause. I couldn't speak, could only stand and embrace my son as he sobbed on my shoulder. I love you, Dad, he whispered. Thank you for not giving up on me. I could never give up on you, son. You're my boy, always will be. Later that night, after everyone had gone home, I sat alone in the empty community center, the same place where 2 years ago I'd stood on stage and wondered if my life had meant anything, the same place where I'd felt seen and valued for the first time in years. I thought about Sarah, about how she'd always believed in the power of redemption, in second chances, in the ability of people to change. She'd been right about so much. I thought about Robert Chen and how a simple act of kindness 30 years ago had come back to save me when I needed it most. How the ripples of what we do spread farther than we can ever imagine. I thought about Marcus and how close we'd come to losing each other forever. How pride and stubbornness and misplaced priorities had almost destroyed the most important relationship in both our lives. And I thought about all the people we'd helped through the foundation, the families whose lives had been changed by a little bit of money and a lot of dignity, the kids who'd go to college because someone believed in them, the small businesses that would thrive because someone gave them a chance. This was legacy. Not the money I'd saved, or the garage I'd built, or the things I'd accumulated, but the lives I'd touched, the values I'd passed on, the difference I'd made in the world, one person at a time. I pulled out my phone and looked at a picture Marcus had taken earlier. Me, surrounded by my children and grandchildren, everyone smiling, everyone together, a family reunited, a family rebuilt. We did it, Sarah, I whispered into the empty room. We did it. 3 years later, on a crisp autumn morning, I woke up feeling different. Not bad, exactly, just different. Tired in a way that sleep couldn't fix, heavy in a way that had nothing to do with weight. I knew what it meant. After 75 years on this earth, you learn to recognize when your body is telling you it's time. I called Marcus, son, I need you to come over and bring Jennifer if you can reach her. Dad, what's wrong? Nothing's wrong, I said, and I meant it. I need to talk to you both. Today. They came within hours. Jennifer caught the first flight out of Seattle. We sat around my kitchen table, the same table that had witnessed so much of our family's history. I'm not sick, I told them, seeing the worry in their faces. At least not in any way that matters. But I'm old and I'm tired, and I wanted to tell you both some things while I still can. Dad, Marcus started, but I held up my hand. Let me finish. I need to say this. I took a deep breath. I've had a good life, a really good life. I married the love of my life. I raised 2 incredible children, even if we lost our way for a while. I worked with my hands and helped people and built something meaningful. I looked at Marcus. And in my final years, I got to watch my son become the man I always hoped he'd be. I got to work alongside him, building something that will help people long after I'm gone. Not many fathers get that gift. I turned to Jennifer. And I got to reconnect with my daughter, got to know my grandchildren, got to pass on the stories and values that matter. That's more than most people get. You're scaring us, Jennifer said, her voice breaking. Don't be scared, sweetheart. This is life. This is how it works. We're born. We live as best we can. We try to leave the world a little better than we found it, and then we rest. I smiled. I'm ready to rest and to see your mother again. We talked for hours about memories and regrets and love and forgiveness, about the foundation and what would happen to it, about my wishes for them and their children. Promise me something, I said, as the sun began to set. Promise me you'll remember what these last few years taught us, that it's never too late to change, that pride isn't worth losing the people you love, that treating people with dignity is the most important success of all. We promise, Dad, Marcus said, gripping my hand, and promise me you'll keep the foundation going, not as a memorial to me, but as a living thing. Keep helping people. Keep treating them with respect. Keep proving that kindness matters. We promise, Jennifer echoed. Good, I said. That's good. I didn't die that day, or that week, or even that month, but I slowed down, spent more time in my recliner, looking at Sarah's picture, remembering Marcus visited every day. Emma brought me soup. Charlie read to me from his school books. Robert Chen came by often. We'd sit in comfortable silence or talk about the early days or laugh about the night he'd walked into that ballroom and changed everything. You saved my life twice, I told him during one visit. Once with that truck and once at that hotel. And you saved mine, he replied. That's what friends do. On a Tuesday morning in late November, I woke up feeling lighter than I had in weeks. The sun was streaming through my window. Sarah's picture seemed to glow in the light. I called Marcus. Can you come over and bring everyone? They all came. Marcus and Vanessa and Emma, Jennifer and her husband and the grandkids, Robert and his family, Tony from the garage, people from the foundation. My house was full of life and love and laughter. We spent the day together, telling stories, looking at old photos, eating good food. It was perfect. Everything I could have wanted. As evening came and people started to leave, Marcus stayed behind. I love you, Dad, he said, holding my hand. I love you too, son. You've made me so proud. Not because of your success, but because of your character. Because you learned that being wrong isn't failure. It's an opportunity to become better. You taught me that. Your mother taught us both that. I closed my eyes, feeling the exhaustion wash over me. But it was a good exhaustion, the exhaustion of a life fully lived. I'm going to sleep now, I said. And I might not wake up, but if I don't, I want you to know these last few years have been the happiest of my life, getting you back, building the foundation, seeing my grandchildren, all of it. Thank you for giving an old man a beautiful ending. Don't talk like that, Dad. You're going to be fine. Maybe, I said, but just in case, thank you for everything, for becoming the man you were meant to be, for making your mother proud, for giving me a reason to keep going when I thought I had nothing left. I drifted off to sleep with Marcus holding my hand, just like I'd held his hand the day he was born. I woke up one more time in the middle of the night. The house was quiet. Marcus had fallen asleep in the chair beside my bed. And there, in the darkness, I saw her, Sarah. She looked exactly as she had on our wedding day, young and beautiful and radiant. She was smiling at me, extending her hand. Ready to come home, Harold? She asked. Yeah, I whispered. Yeah, I'm ready. I looked over at Marcus one last time. My son, my legacy, the proof that people can change, that love can heal, that it's never too late for redemption. Then I took Sarah's hand and I went home. At Harold Walker's funeral, the community center couldn't hold everyone who came. They had to open up the overflow rooms and set up speakers outside. More than 1,000 people came to say goodbye. Marcus gave the eulogy. He told the story of a mechanic who'd worked with his hands for 35 years, helping anyone who needed it. He told the story of a father who'd never given up on his son, even when that son didn't deserve it. He told the story of a man who proved that dignity and kindness were more valuable than money or status. My father taught me that success isn't measured in dollars or titles, Marcus said, his voice strong despite his tears. It's measured in lives touched, people helped, values lived. And by that measure, my father was the most successful man I've ever known. The Walker Legacy Foundation continued to grow. In the 5 years after Harold's death, it helped over 5,000 families, provided scholarships to hundreds of students, funded dozens of small businesses, but more than that, it inspired other companies to start similar programs. The model of treating people with dignity, of helping without humiliating, of recognizing that working people deserve respect, it spread. Robert Chen established the Harold Walker Award, given annually to someone who exemplifies the values of integrity, service, and human dignity. The first recipient was Tony Martinez, who'd taken over the garage and continued Harold's tradition of fixing cars for people who couldn't afford it. Emma Walker, inspired by her grandfather, became a social worker. She specialized in helping families in crisis, always remembering what her grandpa had taught her, that everyone deserves to be treated with dignity. And Marcus? He ran Walker Industries for another 20 years, always keeping his father's values at the center of every decision. When he retired, he handed the company over to Emma, knowing that Harold's legacy was in good hands. On the wall of the Walker Legacy Foundation headquarters, there's a quote from Harold taken from that first speech at the foundation launch. "I don't know how much time I have left, none of us do, but I want to spend whatever time I have doing this, helping people, honoring my wife's memory by living the values she taught me, and working with my son to build something that will outlast both of us." And it did. Harold Walker's legacy outlasted him by generations, not because he was rich or famous or powerful, but because he was kind, because he treated people with dignity, because he believed that everyone matters, and because when given a second chance, he used it to build something beautiful. That's the measure of a life well lived. That's the story of Grandpa's last stand.